Mukta padam gacchantinamayam. Translation. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way, they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to Godhead. Purport. The liberated living entities belong to that place where there are no material miseries. The Bhagavatam says, Samashitaye padapalavam plavam mahatpadam punyayasho murare bhavam buddhir vatsapadam param padam 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 yadapi padam natesham. For one who has accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation, and is famous as Mukunda, or the giver of mukti, the ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's footprint. Param Padam, or the place where there are no material miseries, or Vaikuntha is his goal, not the place where there is danger in every step of life. Owing to ignorance, one does not know that this material world is a miserable place where there are dangers at every step. Out of ignorance only, less intelligent persons try to adjust to the situation by fruitive activities, thinking that the resultant actions will make them happy. They do not know that no kind of material body anywhere within the universe can give life without miseries. The miseries of life, namely birth, death, old age, and diseases, are present everywhere within the material world. But one who understands his real constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Lord, and thus knows the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, engages himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Consequently, he becomes qualified to enter into the Vaikuntha planets, where there is neither material, miserable life, nor the influence of time and death. To know one's constitutional position means to know also the sublime position of the Lord. One who wrongly thinks that the living entity's position and the Lord's position are on the same level is to be understood to be in darkness and therefore unable to engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. He becomes a Lord, little l, himself, and thus paves the way for the repetition of birth and death. But one who, understanding that his position is to serve, transfers himself to the service of the Lord, at once becomes eligible for Vaikuntha Loka. Service for the cause of the Lord is called Karma Yoga or Buddha Yoga, or in plain words, devotional service to the Lord. Karma jam buddha yuktahi phalam chakva vanishina janma bandha vinirmukta padam gacchantinamayam. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to God. So, the first element of this verse is that one has to give up fruitive activities. Now, activity is something that you cannot give up. Everybody performs activity. This you cannot stop. At every moment in time, we are doing something. That is our nature. And it is natural to do things, because we have bodies which possess life, and therefore one of the symptoms of a normal life in any case is activity, except when we're sleeping. Even then we dream so many things. That's another form of activity on the subtle platform. We like to do things. We like to be active. Even the animals like to be active. They're going here, going there, smelling this, tasting that, frolicking in the dust, like dogs often do together. They like to do things. This is natural. Now, human beings, they have regulated activities. Activities which are for the sake of performing works which give them results. Fruitive work. This is called karma. Activities which bring about results. Now, those results may be good or they may be bad. It depends. Now, what makes a result good? What makes a result bad? Well, naturally, when you speak of an effect, you would speak of the cause and try to understand what has created this effect. It's very hard from the effect to understand the cause. Just like any effect that you can think of. Just like if a fruit is falling from the tree. Now, to understand the cause is a little difficult. Did a bird land on the branch and knock off the fruit? Did the fruit fall because it was ripe? Was there an earthquake that caused the fruit to fall? Was it the wind? Was it a person? To find out the specific cause is very difficult. But the general cause you can understand. Some force came and caused that fruit to disconnect from the tree and fall. Similarly, karma can be understood like that. If somebody is receiving a very bad reaction to something, let's say you are being harmed in some way bodily, you can know that this bad reaction came because some bad force occurred. You did something bad previously. This is cause and effect. There are reactions, and these reactions tend to be in accordance with the activity originally performed. If I push this microphone stand, the microphone will move away. But at the same time, I'm also pushed back a little bit. That's because in physics, the law of action and reaction is, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. You know, it's very interesting, but in quantum physics, I'm not a quantum physicist, so I'm not going to say anything too complicated. I just happen to know this from someone who is. There is a discussion going on how every activity which is performed everywhere will have a resultant reaction somewhere in the universe. And that resultant reaction may take place either immediately or later on. It doesn't even have to be connected by time. This is quantum physics. So they're finally figuring out some bits about the law of karma. Why don't you girls come up here or something? Sure.
Come up. You come up.
Good, now we have some more room. Thank you. Finally, we are coming close to understanding the law of karma. The law of karma says, for whatever activity you perform, there is going to be a reaction. Now, the law of karma does not say it's an equal reaction. It could be a reaction which is more severe than the activity that you performed. For example, under the law of karma, for every cow a person kills, he has to take birth as many times as there are hairs on the body of that cow. So there's a reaction. You've done something. You've killed a cow to eat it. And the reaction is for as many hairs as there are on the body of the cow, there will be rebirth. So the reaction is much more severe than the action. So karma is a very complex law. It says if you cause harm to others, that harm will come to you. It's almost as if when you want to punch somebody in the nose, that punch comes around and hits you in the nose. Whenever you try to harm somebody else, because we've seen that, isn't it? We go out of our way to harm a person. And somehow or another, if we succeed to harm the person, we also get harmed later on. It may not even seem connected. Maybe you have noticed it, maybe not. Karma is very subtle. You may be thinking you are avoiding all reactions. But then, later on, the reaction comes. Swiftly, from another point of view, which you weren't expecting. That's the way karma works. It always finds its mark. Now the police don't always catch their man. Murderers come, murderers go. Police catch maybe 1/10 of all the murderers. But karma has a superior direction. And that superior direction comes from above. And never does it fail. Not in one case. That is because there is an agency directing all the activities of all the living entities. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yamcharadani mayaya. There is an Ishvara, a controller, who is within the hearts of each and every person, each and every living creature, including the animals, including the birds, including the plants, and everyone. There is a living entity who is within the hearts of all these living entities. That person is the supreme living entity, Ishvara, the controller. Ishvara, the word Ishvara, specifically refers to someone who can control. I can control. You can control. But what can we control? So I am a spiritual master of some disciples, so I can maybe control their activities, sometimes. But I cannot control what goes on outside the front door of Govinda's. I cannot control. My controlling power is very limited. you have a similar experience. You may be able to control your family members. Sometimes. But once they walk outside the door, they do whatever they like. And you can't control them anymore. So we're all very small Ishwaras, small controllers, limited controllers. The demigods, those very greatly powerful persons who control the activities of the material universe, they're very much bigger controllers than we are. But they are not the topmost controllers, because above them is another controller, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is called Ishvara Parama Krishna. He's the supreme controller of all controllers. There's no controller greater than him. Sarva Karna Karnam. He's the cause of all causes. So he controls everything, including the great demigods who control everything in this world, and including us, including all living entities. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hridesha Arjuna Tishtati. Within the hearts of all the living entities, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is directing the wanderings of the living entities who are seated on a machine as if a machine made of material energy. We think we're doing so many things and controlling so many things, but actually the material energy is controlling. Material energy is controlling. We are just wandering through different species of life, wandering through different experiences in this life, being controlled by the material energy in so many ways. This control comes, Prabhupada mentions in the purport, and it is also mentioned here, Janma Bandha, Vinirmukta. To come to the liberated point, you have to get freed from Janma Bandha, the bondage of birth and death and old age and disease. This is bondage, and we're all bound up. We can't be controllers because these four things control us. For example, birth. Did anybody in this room say, I want to take birth in this particular body? Sometimes people think that they have chosen to take birth in their particular body. Okay, that's true partially, because karmana daivana chena jantur deho bhupataye. As you are acting in this present lifetime, you are producing your next body. According to the way you're acting now, according to what you're doing right now, you are producing your next body. So in one sense, you are choosing your next body. If you like to eat anything and everything without discrimination, if you like to have sex with your mother and daughter and sister, it doesn't matter who, then you can take birth as a hog next lifetime by your own choice. Because you are saying, I want to live like a hog. That's how you take birth as a hog. Sometimes people think that once you have come to the human form of life, you can never go down again. But this idea is just a mental concoction, and I'm not sure where it has come from originally or who has originally concocted it. But although it's a very popular idea because it's a very positive idea, now I've come to the human form, I can only get better. That's great, isn't it? Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. You can get worse if you want. And we've seen it too. A man can elevate himself in this lifetime. A man can degrade himself in this lifetime. Somebody can become a big head of state and then degrade himself into an alcoholic or a drug addict, a complete wreck, a mental, physical wreck. We've seen it. Somebody can go up and down in the same lifetime. Somebody may be a normal, well-established person and then find himself in jail and miserable for his whole life. To say that once you have attained a certain level and can't go down again makes no sense. Besides that, it's not stated in any scripture. The point is, Ordvagachanti sattvasta, majje tishtati rajasa, jaganagunavritti stad hogachanti tamasa. If you die in the mode of goodness, then you go up to the higher levels. You can take birth amongst the demigods. If you die in the mode of passion, you can remain a human being. And if you die in the mode of ignorance, you go down into the lower species of life. A human being who's having sex with his sister or his daughter or his mother, and this goes on all the time. I read an article how incest is very popular nowadays, although nobody likes to talk about it. Fathers having sex with daughters, sons with mothers. They don't like to talk about it. Nobody talks about it. They don't mention it to anybody. They don't mention it to their friends, or you never hear about it. But it's a big thing. So this is just what the Hogs do. The Hogs, they do not make discrimination between which person this woman Hog, the female Hog, is. Doesn't matter if it's his mother. If he wants to have sex, he has sex. He doesn't discriminate. This is my mother. This is my sister. This is my daughter. He doesn't discriminate. Therefore, persons who perform such activities are not actually living on the level of human beings. They're living on the level of Hogs. Or a person who just likes to sleep all day long. The bear also likes to sleep for 6 months out of the year. Hibernation, it's called. He can become a bear and sleep long periods of time and be very happy. Those who like to eat anything and everything, well, there are all kinds of animals who also like to eat anything and everything, goats and hogs and dogs. And if you like to be intoxicated, it's much, much better to be an ant. After all, ants, they are very expert at finding sugar, isn't it? Anywhere you leave a piece of sugar, the ants can find it. I know in Mayapur, in India, I just came back from Mayapur about a week and a half ago. So there, sometimes I because I take some medicine with honey, so I have to keep my honey bottles. So I would keep my honey bottle on my on shelf in my room. So I live on the 4th floor. 4th floor. There are no ants in my room. Completely free from ants. On the 4th floor. Within 12 hours, these ants have made a line from the downstairs all the way upstairs into my room, up to that honey jar, and they're taking the honey and going back down again. I didn't tell them where the honey was. Believe me, I didn't tell them. I don't want them in my room. But they're so expert. And why do they like sugar and honey so much? Because it intoxicates them completely. You see them staggering around. They're walking into the wall and they're going on. They love sugar. So if you love to become intoxicated like that, ant life is much better. And as far as sex goes, human being is a useless life for sex. Because after all, you can do it once a day, maximally, for a couple of days in a row, maybe a couple of weeks. If you're young, some months in a row. After a while you get tired, have to take a break. And when you get older, it gets tougher. And when you're really old, it doesn't work anymore. Human life is a drag. But pigeons can have sex multiple times in a day. I've heard astounding figures of how many times a day pigeons have sex. And they are enjoying it each and every time. So, there are different species of life which grant different facilities. The pigeons are enjoying. The dogs are enjoying. The hogs are enjoying. The tiger is enjoying. They all enjoy their particular kind of taste, with a particular kind of sense which is prominent. Whereas the human being has all his senses prominent. He has all his senses prominent. Therefore, if he wants to simply utilize his senses for enjoyment, because he's so ill-suited to sense enjoyment, much better he takes birth in a particular animal species. If you die in the mode of ignorance, you can do that. Most people, however, die in the mode of passion, fruitive results. All their work should bring them results. Should give them happiness and distress all the time. Money should be gained. Things should be gained. Houses should be gained. Cars and appliances and so many things. Fruitive results. So the human being generally dies in the mode of passion and takes birth again as a human being. And wanders in this cycle of birth and death. And what does he find? Chakra parivartante sukhanica dukhanica. Happiness and distress again and again in cycles. So this law of karma is very subtle. As you act, so you receive the results, and you may not like it. We mentioned this point, that people think they choose to take birth in a particular body. But right now, if I asked everybody in this room, do you think that your body is perfect? Do you like everything about your body? If you had any choice to make a list about what you would change in your body, how long would that list be? I did that once. It was 2 pages long. And that was just the serious things. You could make a huge list. Nose has to be moved a little, hair has to be different than, the chin should be a little something, and less fat, of course, and more muscle here and a less muscle there, and a better, no pain in this knee and no pain in the elbow, and less headaches, and so on. You all know better than me what you'd rather have in your body. So, why is it that these problems come upon us even though we don't want them? Nobody wants to die. Everyone wants to live as long as he can, unless of course he's slightly insane, which causes him to commit suicide. But generally everybody likes to live as long as they can. But why does death come anyway? And while we're coming to the point of death, we have to grow old and get diseased. No one wants to be diseased. No one. Disease is no fun. Normal condition of life is to be healthy and happy. Disease condition of life is suffering. No one likes it. You can't perform your activities properly, and so many problems are there. So why do these miseries come upon us even though we do not want them? That's the question. And what can be done about it? Well, the answer is, I'll just read the translation to this verse. By thus engaging in devotional service to the Lord, great sages or devotees free themselves from the results of work in the material world. In this way they become free from the cycle of birth and death and attain the state beyond all miseries by going back to God. There is an answer to all this. The answer is not to try to perform good works so you can elevate yourself to the heavenly planets. Because even in the heavenly planets there are problems, and okay, let's say there's less problems, but at one point you have to return. Shine punye mancha lokam pashanti. You think going to the heavenly planets is great. It's just like thinking, let's go to, what's that island? This island in the Atlantic that...
Canary Islands.
Canary Islands. Canary Islands. Very nice place. All the Swedish people go there. They even have shops in Swedish there. Everybody likes Canary Islands. Great place. Let's say you go to Canary Islands and you can stay there for 2 months. Well, the first thing that you'll notice is you get used to the Canary Islands. And you start getting bored. Because there's not much to do, right? And then you start lamenting for other things you want to do. Even you go to a place where there's everything perfect, but still the mind is not satisfied. Okay. Anyway, let's say you don't even get to that point, but after 2 months you have to return to Sweden, where it's still ice and it's still cold. You feel miserable when you have to return. You get off the plane, it's freezing. When I came from India, I felt the same experience. Freezing cold and ice, and had to watch out from slipping on the street. And that's what happens when you're in the heavenly planets. You're in the heavenly planets, everything's nice, you're thinking this is great, it's going to last forever. And one day, time knocks on your door and says, "You, sir, down." And you've got to go down, back to earth. Marchaloka. Marchaloka means earth. Marcha is a word that comes from Ritu in Sanskrit. It means the place where death takes place all the time. Because on earth, things are always being born and dying rapidly. Therefore it's called Marchaloka. So you're in the heavenly planets, everything's wonderful, you've got to come down. And oh, what a horrible thing that is. That's just like if I gave you 10 billion crowns to enjoy and do anything you wanted with. And then one day I came and said, okay, whatever you've got left, hand it over. Now you've got nothing. How are you going to feel? One who has nothing to lose. So he doesn't lament if he loses something. A man who's got everything and loses everything, that person laments the most of anyone. That's obvious, that's natural. When you've got so much and you lose so much, when you've got little and you lose little, what's that? That doesn't matter. You don't take it seriously. But when you've got so much and you lose so much, oh, it's so horrible. That's what it's like coming down from the heavenly planets. You've had so much enjoyment in Svargaloka, and it was all taken away in a moment, and you fall down again. Therefore, that's not a solution. The solution is mentioned here, that one should engage in devotional service, giving up fruitive activities. Because devotional service brings one to the platform of liberation from this material world. And liberation from this material world is the goal of life. Actually, it's not the real goal, but it's pretty good. It's the first step. Muktir hitvanyatarupam swarupena vayastati. The real purpose of liberation, the real form of liberation, is what happens after liberation. Just like if you're in a forest and you're lost in a forest and you're trying to get out of the forest, and all of a sudden you're out of the forest. Well, you're liberated from the forest. That's great. But where are you then? You still have to get yourself engaged in practical activity for satisfaction. Similarly, liberation gets you freed from the bondage of birth and death in the material world. It's very nice, especially when you've been suffering a lot. But the real goal is to engage positively in spiritual activities according to your original constitutional position. So the real form of liberation is devotional service to the Lord. And that liberation can be had even today in this material world. Devotional service is so nice. It's kleshagni. It destroys immediately all forms of material miseries. It immediately liberates one from the bondage of birth and death. Devotional service is so nice. And it engages one spiritually in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is completely satisfying. Totally satisfying and completely perfect. Why is it perfect? Because I'm an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. I am the eternal servant of Krishna, and my nature is to serve him, because he's great, I'm small. He's the controller, I'm the controlled. He's the supreme controller, and I am infinitely small. And therefore my nature is to render service to him. And when I do that, I become happy. Immediately. Immediately you become happy when engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. There's no doubt about it. We experience it every day here in this temple. In fact, devotees cannot tolerate having nothing to do. They must immediately do some service for Krishna. Otherwise, they become totally upset. Why? Because devotional service is the liberated platform. And spacing out is the material platform. And no one wants to go back to the material platform who has tasted the spiritual platform. Whoever has tasted that spiritual platform never wants to give it up. Therefore, we are here in this Hare Krishna Center teaching how to attain devotional service of the Lord. How to perform Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means the linking process of devotional service to the Supreme. And it is done with love and devotion. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer and give away, whatever austerities you perform, should be done as an offering unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Then, you become happy because you're acting properly, and Krishna becomes happy because you're acting properly, and the loving exchange between the living entity and the devotee, living entity and the Supreme opens. And that loving relationship between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity is the eternal perfection of existence. Therefore, we thank you very much that you have come to this lecture and to this Sunday feast here in the Hare Krishna Center. I will also probably, if things go well, give lecture next Sunday too. So you are invited to come here often to hear about Krishna consciousness and to take prasadam, spiritual food offered to Krishna, and perform some service. Chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Just by chanting, you are performing service with the tongue. Just by eating prasadam, you are performing service with the tongue. So do this and be happy. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions today from our guests about any of these subject matters? Last week we had a very lively question and answer session, but in the beginning everybody's afraid to be the first one to ask a question. So don't be afraid, it won't hurt. I promise. I won't yell at you.
Excuse me.
Yes.
You said there were 3 ways of dying: ignorance, passion, and
Goodness. Goodness means in the light of knowledge. Goodness is generally understood in terms of knowledge. When you have knowledge, illumination, awareness, opening of consciousness, this is goodness. And passion means fruitive work, greed, activity, all for goals. And ignorance means sleep and madness, and just complete lack of knowledge. Yes?
You talk very strongly clear. I wonder how long have you been in the
A little more than 25 years. How old am I? I'm 48. What do I look? It's very hard to tell how old devotees are. I was in the doctor's office once, and he was a friend of mine. So he was asking everybody, guess how old he is. And they all guessed 10, 15 years too little. So it's very hard to tell how old devotees are. They're very young.
And what made you find this way?
What made me?
Yeah.
Must have been Krishna, because I wasn't looking for Krishna consciousness. I just happened to bump into devotees one day. I was driving down the road towards my house in Long Island, and I was just about to pass the road where my university was on the left side. I graduated already. I was teaching in school, but I knew so many people there who were younger than me, still in the school. And all of a sudden the car turned itself and drove down the road. And I said, what's going on here? My car just turned. I couldn't figure out what made my car turn, because I didn't do it. I swear to God, I didn't do it. The car just turned. And then the car was going down the road, and I drove into the university, said, well, we've gotten this far, let's see what's happening. And I went to one friend of mine's room, and it had a sign on the door saying, gone to a program in the student union. So I said, well, maybe that's why I'm here. So I went to the student union, and as soon as I walked in there were all these Hare Krishnas jumping up and down, having a kirtan. And I had never seen a Hare Krishna before. And I was astounded. And I thought this was the most wonderful thing I'd ever seen, experienced. And then I decided, I met one girl who invited me to the temple. And the day after that, I went to the temple and joined the temple. Right, basically I was attracted by the kirtan. I didn't understand philosophy very much. I wasn't a big philosopher in my former times. I thought I was a big philosopher, but actually I wasn't. Everybody thinks they're a big philosopher, you know? But I wasn't really a big philosopher. I just liked the music, this chanting of Hare Krishna. So I joined in with the kirtans and everything, and then people started talking to me about the philosophy. And I thought, that makes sense, that makes sense. I didn't take it very seriously, but I said, whatever they said, it certainly makes sense. So I see no reason not to stay here. So I just continued staying. And I remember about 6 months later, I picked up a book for the first time. Or 3 months later it was. And started reading it. It was the Bhagavad Gita. I read up to the 11th chapter after Krishna revealed the universal form. I said, well, that's it, the whole Bhagavad Gita.